Hey Dan, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Doing well. I'll jump right in and
Dan Margenau, Lix Brands, and my position is founder and CEO.
awesome. Dan, give us a little backstory on Lix and kind of let us know what it is you guys do in the present day, and then we'll kind of dive back to the backstory leading up to it.
Okay. So Lix, you know, as an engineer, non-marketing person, our tagline is Lix makes everything better. I'm proud of myself for that tagline, but we'll see what transpires there. But we basically take active ingredients that are difficult for your body to absorb. We go through a patented encapsulation process, and it makes those active ingredients much more bioavailable, makes them water soluble. So you can basically mix it in any food, beverage, cosmetic. It's transdermal and transmucosal. So basically works in, like I said, like makes everything better. So that works well in vitamins, supplements, dietary supplements, things like that. Works well in functional mushrooms, and then obviously in the CBD and THC space as well. So
So, what types of raw materials are you able to convert into water soluble?
I can't say anything, but
Yeah.
just about anything. So
And so at this point, I did not even realize that. So kind of educate me a little bit about the advantages of doing things versus, let's say, would you use that for flavoring, or would it be simply for an element that you want to put in for some sort of effect?
and not necessarily for flavoring. It can change the characteristics of what you're putting in there as far as flavor and that type of thing goes. So I wouldn't necessarily use it for flavoring. We've had people use it from like a terpene standpoint, things like that, where they're trying to add it in for beverages and things of that nature. Um, but yeah, I mean it from like B vitamins, anything like that. We can encapsulate that. Essentially, the biggest benefit is your body absorbs it. So you do more with less, which is kind of my industrial engineer background, is to make things run more efficiently. And so, you know, this technology does that, right? So we've all taken like a B complex, and I think I mentioned that to you, but we've all taken like a B complex where you think, you read the label and it's like, oh, I'm going to get 50,000% of my recommended daily allowance of B12, and I'm going to have all this energy and whatever. And then, an hour later, you have to go to the restroom, and you have neon yellow, pee, and you're like, oh wait, that was the color of the vitamin I took. Turns out you didn't really absorb most of that. It just, you processed it, and that was it. So with our technology, you actually absorb, pretty close to 100% of what you're intaking. So, from a manufacturing standpoint, you can do that. You can put less in and still get the same effect or even a better effect on the way out. So that's helped us in, markets where there's limitations on milligrams you can put in a specific beverage or things like that. Um, but yeah, I mean that's kind of the way it works.
When you talk about now I'll remind you some of these things I know the answers to, but I want to do an education of the consumers as well and the public. So let's talk specifically like for this topic of right now in this part of hemp THC, like hemp infused beverages.
Okay.
Talk to me about your process and the process of using water, the water soluble versus the other ways that it's done, and kind of how that helps, like you were alluding to a little bit, the process time and quality and things like that.
So our process is a patented process. It's patented technology, not patent pending. So I the things I can speak to is we're clean label. So we, depending on exactly what you're looking for, we're basically three ingredients. Uh, can't four, depending on what you're going to be using it for. But clean label, like I said. So all natural. We don't meet the threshold of organic, but we do meet the threshold of all natural. Um, and you know, our one of our main ingredients is water, which is one of the indicators that it's actually water soluble, because that is the steady state that it's in. um, and without getting into the chemistry of things, like that's its happy place now, is in water. And then if you mix that into a 16-ounce beverage or whatever, then that becomes its new steady state. So you don't get the settling, you don't the one big advantage for us is we don't have the sticking, whether that be to equipment or whether that be to the final container that's in the can, the bottle, those types of things. Um, we don't have any of those sticking issues that a lot of, we'll just say, other products have. So
It's one of those things that I also want operators to understand is moving to that type of a product mix and those types of raw materials. Obviously you just alluded to from a cleanliness standpoint. It's a more efficient thing to use. Not to mention, if I'm tell me if I'm wrong on this. That's what transitioned the products from like taking an hour or two to have an onset to really the 15 minutes. Is that correct?
yeah, so it's a much more efficient process, right? Kind of going with that, efficiency side of things. You don't ever have to shut down to clean your equipment and stuff like that. Everything, once we are a couple steps in on our production process, everything from that point forward is cleaned with water. So, everybody in the THC or CBD space has worked with like a distillate or a crude or whatever, and it's like this. It's like honey, right? It's a messy, sticky mess, and depending on what people are using, they use a fair amount of not so friendly chemicals to clean that stuff up. And for us, all of that can be cleaned with water. So that saves you on having to buy all the nasty chemicals, and it saves you the downtime of having to stop and do a clean, and it saves you from having those kinds of residues. Nothing is completely cleaned, right? There's always certain thresholds or certain limits that are had for equipment cleanliness and things like that. And if you're not introducing it, then you don't have to worry about it. So you don't have to worry about getting hexane in your process, or alcohol or things of that nature, because we never introduced it.
When you what was the year that you started Lix?
We started Licks in 2018, I guess.
And what were you doing prior to that?
Prior to that, I was working for, well, I originally was doing like a operational improvement consulting, so process improvement consulting, manufacturing, industrial engineering. And the company that I was doing that for ended up hiring me, and then uh, they were the ones who originally, you know, filed the patent and did the patent for this process. So the company called EBU, EBBU, for anybody who wants to look them up or whatever. Um, and so I got hired in there, and then I was a minor investor in that company, and then was there for about a year or so, and left there. And when I left there, I licensed this technology from them. And they subsequently were purchased by Canopy Growth Corporation, and as part of that purchase, they were supposed to eliminate all the licenses, and not that there were like 100 of them or anything like that, but they were supposed to eliminate any licenses that were outstanding. Our agreement was written well enough that it didn't have to be eliminated, um, and so it was kind of a thorn in their side for a bit, and we negotiated that we basically got to keep our license, and there was no back end tie to them really.
Nice. And you're located out in Denver?
No, I was located in Denver. I a couple years ago decided to move my family up to Lakeside, Montana. So we're kind of in Northwest Montana. Um, Better place to raise my kids. Lot safer, lot more real. So we'll just, yeah.
I do love it out there. I've been out there a few times. My family and I do a lot of national park trips and things like that. So we
Okay.
spent the time up in Montana and then went up to Banff and over Canada.
Okay.
So
Yeah, Banff is on my list. I have not been there yet, but we're about, I don't know, 45 minutes or an hour from Glacier National Park.
oh, that's
So
awesome.
it's pretty great. Pretty great. My kids with their school, they actually like do, you think about being in Denver or a place like that and you do field trips to, you know, kind of less than stellar places, and my kids get to do field trips to like Glacier National Park. They do snowshoeing expeditions. They been doing fishing stuff and things of that nature. So it's been pretty great from that standpoint.
That's awesome. I've grown up. I got a mix of as a kid as well as an adult, a mix of both rural life and urban life.
Yeah.
And I honestly like when it comes to all the activities you're talking about, and kind of just a nervous system regulation and things like that. I've always chose the rural. Every time I get into a city, it's like I love cities and I love the energy, but sometimes it gets overwhelming. You lose touch of the reality and really just putting your feet in the grass and getting in touch with things. So I appreciate that move to Montana for sure.
I do that every day. We live on Flathead Lake,
Oh, that's
and I cold plunge in the lake most every morning. So
that's awesome. Well,
it's
talk to me about when you were working and you were an employee. Obviously, everything kind of transitioned there, and you had left, and then the licensing. When was the point prior to that you were like, what was it like your light bulb moment where you decided to go out on your own? And when you left there, was that in your intention to go out on your own, or did it just kind of happenstance with the situations?
well, I'd done that before.
Okay,
So that was a few years before that. I was working for Open Vape or Organa Brands. So I ran their operations, and kind of got them when I was taking the job there, and not disparaging them, just the fact that the way this industry has been, right? This industry, that industry specifically has worked in warehouses and basements and garages for the better part of a century. So um, they didn't have that opening and opportunity to that people don't understand what lean manufacturing is, right?
right.
Let alone real just general manufacturing. We've all had that conversation with the person that says they're a master grower, and you're like, wait, but you just have three plants in your basement. Like that, you're not like, we're talking about agriculture, and you're talking about like having a bonsai tree. So you know but I was taking the job at Open Vape at the time, is what they were called, and they were like market leaders. Right? I think they had something like 80% of market share in Colorado, and I don't know the other states, but somewhere around that 80% for vape cartridges, and um, you know they were running things like they had been run in a basement and in a warehouse.
Yeah.
That I think the technical term for that is shit show. Um, and I had that conversation with my wife coming in, like, oh my gosh, like what am I coming into here? And I had that thought in my mind, like, hey, these guys are leaders in the space, and they are running things as poorly as they're running them. Like with my help and hiring the right people and doing some of the right stuff, like we can take this to the moon. um and so within a couple of months of being there, I we went from like 2,000 cartridges a day on 3 shifts to, I think, 5,000 or 5,500 cartridges a day on 2 shifts. And
Nice.
I didn't like fire anybody, and we didn't like go to 12-hour shifts or something like that to be able to do that. We just had attrition, and we moved people into a better shift, and being able to line balance and do the batch processes properly, and do those kinds of things. Nothing rocket science type, but makes some big improvements. And so then shortly after that, well, not shortly after that, I was there for, I guess, about a year or so, and kind of had that decision of like, okay, well, these guys were leaders in the space and they needed as much help as they need. How much help does everybody else need,
Yeah.
right? Like it's an industry I believe in. I'm not the guy who grew up smoking pot all the time and whatever. I think that the first time I got high was actually like on my 40th birthday. Um, so and I already been in the industry for a number of years, and I was like, well, I can't just be like, well, I haven't gotten high for 37 years or whatever. I'm gonna just get high on a Tuesday. So I kind of made it an event of when I did that. So
Tell me it was
but
like 2 in the afternoon.
no, 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 it wasn't, and it was actually the first thing I took was actually what's now called Lix.
Okay.
So at the time at Ebu, it was called Aqua Drops, but that was the first product I took. I illegally put it in a mixed drink, so at dinner with some friends. So um, because you're not allowed to mix alcohol. So
Yeah.
um, but it's still it was a industry. It's an industry that I believe in. I think it's criminal what they have done with criminalizing this plant and all the benefits that it provides. I mean, not to mention hemp and hempcrete and hemp paper and all of those amazing things that can be done, that are much better for anybody that's even looking at stuff from an environmental standpoint.
Yeah.
um so I believe in it, and so my thought with that was, if I start an operations consulting company, then I can help lots of companies produce more efficiently, which helps them, be able to survive.
Hmm.
Um, Also produce things more safely and produce better quality products. So it helps the industry, it helps, the customers, and um, it just helps overall make it a more kind of respectable, upstanding kind of industry. So that was kind of my decision at point of, a super long rambly question or answer to your question of why did I go out on my own.
No,
That
no,
was
it's
kind of,
perfectly. No, it's perfectly. I like it the way you put it too, because you know, especially like I started out about, I think it was like 2019, adding it from the alcohol portfolio, adding in the hemp stuff. And it was that. It was the same experience I had in the very beginning, was trying to sort through the people that knew what they were doing versus the ones that didn't. And then from there, it was okay, who can I help and take my alcohol experience and transcend this into the same exact
yeah,
philosophies of packaged beverage distribution. And it was a challenge, and it was sometimes even the same egos in certain situations as with alcohol, where you went through this, I'm sure, as well, where these guys on the front end of things, I'd be requiring their papers and stuff like that, and I would get forged papers and everything like that, so I'd have to fire them, and they wouldn't be, I'd fire them as a
yeah,
client. And then now I finally, after a few years of it, finally I've gotten to a place where I have a steady stream of quality clients that do care about the product they're producing. They're not in it just to get high. They're in it to actually bring both the recreational and the medicinal aspects of things, without lying to the public and saying they're all about medicinal, when really there's a balance to it. We're in this
well, and,
industry.
and I'm fine if you want to just get high, like that's
Yeah, that's
totally
exactly my point.
appropriate, right? Like, who
Exactly
am
my
I to
point.
say that you do or don't? But like, my biggest, not my biggest, one of my issues in the industry, and you kind of alluded to it, was the people that don't care, right? you know in with Licks, one of the things, our product is not for everybody, right? It's not the cheapest thing out there. It's not going to be something for somebody who is turning around and being like, oh, well, I put it through a homogenizer and now it's water soluble, and you know it's not, right. You're selling snake oil. You're you know faking what you're doing. And I have had challenges. I've had discussions with people where you're like, hey, if we do this, we can make your product that much better. you know like, your customer will actually get what they want. They'll get what they ordered. They get what they're paid for. And you know you can then sleep well at night, and that you provided a good quality product to your customers. And I've had a number of conversations where people's response was like, why? I make money now.
Exactly.
And I'm like, holy crap. I'm like, but don't you want to like feel like you did the right thing for people? Don't you want to understand, you know? So, you know, it's good, I guess, to find that out in initial conversations with people as opposed to down the road. I've had situations where I found out some of that kind of stuff down the road with people. But it's challenging, and it's challenging for the industry because those are the kinds of people that give the industry a bad name or have it continue a bad name.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
where you have water soluble beverages that people have that don't actually have any active ingredient in it
yeah.
because they couldn't figure out how to make it work, or there's active ingredient in it but it's all stuck to the side of the can. And when you test it, it's like, yeah, I put in 75 milligrams, and you test it and it's got 5 milligrams in it or something because the rest of it is all stuck to the side of the can. And so you have people that are all, they're concerned about cost on the front end, but then they're like, well, so to make it test right, we'll just double what we put in or
Yeah.
quadruple what we put in. And you're like, how is that cost effective? Like,
It's and also not accounting for the budget of all the cleaning work that they're doing afterwards when they rotate through, assuming they do the proper cleaning too.
well, the budget of cleaning, the downtime, right?
Yeah.
Like, from an engineering standpoint, that the equipment downtime is what kills you the most.
Hmm.
People try to optimize, well, we're supposed to fill bottles at, whatever, pick a number, 100 a minute. And, let's try to make it 110 a minute. And you overdo and push the equipment beyond what it's capable of. But then they don't realize there's this whole chunk of time. Like, yes, you tried to save and you got 10% more by running at 110 a minute instead of 100. But like, now you're down because you broke the equipment, or you're down because you have to clean the equipment for like 6 hours. And it's like, well, how many of those minutes at an extra 10 bottles per minute do you have to do to compensate for the 6 hours you were down for the, broken or cleaning equipment?
I always tell people there's business math and then there's ecosystem math.
Yeah.
And when you realize, when I try to teach my clients about ecosystem math, their brains just explode because it's like, okay, because it's not just multiple line items in the budget that you're looking at on a ledger that don't relate to each other. And for some reason, we lose touch as manufacturers, producers, and everything in the front end, like sticker shock, as opposed to
Yeah.
really looking at the full economic impact of our decisions in the actual entire product cycle.
You got to look at the whole cycle. And that's what people don't understand. I mean, it's one of the things people don't understand. I mean, but it's across the board, right?
It's
You have the
in
same
every
guy.
industry. Yeah, every
You have the
industry.
same guy who's, like, oh, I'm driving this electric car and it's zero emissions. And you're like, but what got to that point of an electric car? Like, how you strip mined for lithium and cobalt, and you had all of these huge energy driven processes. I mean, there's some stuff out there I've seen where it's like, oh, okay, in order to make up for that zero carbon footprint that you're claiming, the initial impact of that carbon and the initial impact of building the car and mining the battery and doing all of that stuff, it doesn't pay for itself until like 200,000
Yeah.
miles. And at that point, you already had to replace the battery once. It's like, okay, so like, I'm not against electric cars, but you have to understand
Yes.
the entirety of the cycle and the entirety of what you're dealing with, because otherwise you're just looking at a piece of it, you know.
And that's exactly it. It's I think I've done this many times too, been blind and not looked at the full ecosystem. The old phrase, the forest from the trees kind of thing. But even
Yeah.
then, it's really, how do all the roots feed each other and all that. And I think it's it's important not only as a business owner, but it's also important as a human being. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's usually reflective of like an internal accountability where sometimes that person also kind of relates that in their life, where they're not mean to other people, but they are kind of oblivious to how their actions and statements affect other
Oh
people.
yeah. I mean, it's it's everything. everything in life like that. Dealing with people, loading the dishwasher,
Yeah.
right? Like you can just chuck stuff in there and not pay attention to how you're loading it and overlapping dishes and things like that. Or you can put it in, take the extra time to put it in the beginning. It's like, I had my I think eighth grade sociology teacher. He used to say, he was this like Southern guy, hilarious, but he had all these fun sayings. But he's like, one of them was, "You're slower than molasses on a cold winter morning." But
I grew up in West Virginia for
yeah,
a little while, so I know I appreciate the old.
What his phrase was, "You're going to pay. You can pay me now, or you can pay me later, but you're going to pay me." And that has stuck with me, right? Like I can take the extra time and load the dishwasher properly and have clean dishes that come out of it, or I can not take the extra time and get a bunch of dishes that are stuck together that don't get cleaned, and then I got to run it again, which is inefficient, or I got to take and clean them myself, or whatever.
Yeah,
And that
all the
applies.
food just gunked up your filter on the bottom.
Yeah, yeah, and that applies to generally every aspect of life. But certainly in manufacturing worlds and things like that, it's like, oh well, this is easier to produce this front end, but then it sticks to all your equipment, and I have to stop and tear down equipment or clean equipment or things like that. I have to buy all these other chemicals. I have to do all these other things, or in the end, the product, it doesn't work as well.
Yeah.
Our product, the absorption rate is pretty close to 100%. Whereas most like tinctures and stuff out there, your absorption, is somewhere between about 5 and 15 or 20%.
Hmm.
So you get all these people that, and it's hard to educate a consumer, right? But they're just looking for what has the most THC. I had that issue when we were at Ebu, because Ebu's whole thing was trying to, put specific molecules together to make the best products. And so they did a whole bunch of testing and a whole bunch of stuff. And it wasn't always like their product wasn't always the highest THC, but the combination of those cannabinoids and terpenes that they did, it had the best effect.
Mm-hmm.
Like hands down. I cannot tell you how many people that when I was working there, that I would hand a vape pen to, and they're like, "Oh, I can't get high on this." And then, a few minutes later, they're like, "Oh my God, I am so high." And you're like, "I know. I told you, you just didn't listen." I said, start small, you know what I mean? And so it's just that kind of thing. And it's that same consumer education where you're trying to say, "Hey, look, I know that other guy says there's 100 milligrams in there. A, they're stuck to the side of the can, and B, your body's not going to absorb them the way that they're supposed to absorb. So you're really getting a few milligrams out of it. For ours, we can put in a lot less and you get that same impact." So,
It's I was over yesterday down in the middle of West Virginia, Moonflower Hemp, which is a really awesome little facility there. They're all the way seed to sale, all the way through vertically integrated, owner, everything on site. And we had all the distributors across the state on site, and they were giving them a tour, and then I was working with them on distribution strategy and things like that. And when we went into the back room where they make the gummies and stuff, it was the funniest interaction, because the one distributor, like, his exact thing was that he's like, "So how do you know every single gummy has exactly the same?" And then they went through the whole process and everything like that. But it was funny because he showed his hand, and everybody's kind of, sometimes the distributor guys can be a little uptight. And he was like
yeah,
showing his hand that, hey, he had experience making brownies in his kitchen, where he's like, "But what I've experienced in the past, it's like one is really potent." And then we all started laughing, and I kind of called him out home baking brownies at home. So take me, you mentioned eighth grade. Where are you geographically, like middle school and high school in your life? Are
oh
you
man.
I warned you. I warned you.
In what respect? Where was I at?
Let's not spiritually. Let's start literally. Yeah, geographically, where your feet planted in that time in your life?
I grew up in Colorado.
Oh, okay,
So,
all the way through. Gotcha. Okay.
I grew up in kind of unincorporated Littleton.
Oh, did you go to Columbine in that area?
I did go to Columbine.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
I actually
Hear that you're
graduated.
your work. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody knows Columbine, of course. So,
Yeah.
I graduated about 2 years before that happened. So I
Yeah.
graduated with one of the shooter's older brothers. Um, played basketball with him and stuff, and so crazy life. But
Yeah, we're about the same age, so that was obviously for anywhere, and especially you know, everybody knew that. Growing up in Colorado and things like that, did you have a lot of business owners in your life, or it kind of what was the thing
uh,
that kind of piqued that interest as you went through your career?
my dad was
Okay,
so he was in sales his whole career basically, and then when I'm trying to think exactly the year. Huh. I don't know the exact year, but somewhere I think I was in high school, maybe somewhere in that range, junior high or high school. But he started his own business, so he did electric acoustical sound masking, so like white noise,
wow,
that type of stuff. Um, and so I watched him and watched how he ran his business and a lot of the aspects of it. He never had any efficiency training in that respect, but I he ran his business, and I get a lot of my, some could call it OCD kind of tendencies. But I get a lot of those tendencies, I think, from him. Just in how efficiently he ran his business and keeping overhead low and those kinds of things. One of his things was make money in big chunks, not like one $8 sale at a time and things like that. So
was he selling wholesale or was he doing was he
no, so
manufacturing?
he was essentially you know an installer
Okay,
for the electric acoustical sound masking. And so his company is called Margenau Associates Incorporated. It's still running now. He sold it. Um, and it still has that legacy in his name and is continuing on. But he would sell stuff primarily like you call centers, office buildings, those types of things. He also did stuff with like spook rooms and stuff for like the Department of Defense and things like that, where you're trying to prevent people from hearing stuff.
oh wow,
Um, but yeah, so it was like a call center. So you'd have 100,000 square foot call center or office building that you would install the whole job for. So it was that type of stuff.
did you ever when you were in high school and beyond, did you ever go with them on site and kind of see that other thing as well?
All the time. I mean, I installed the first job with him, and I worked for his company, as an installer primarily, but I also, kind of ran crews and things like that, at different phases in life. But I did that through college, as a means to make some money. He paid decently, so it was good.
So, so he was one of those unique individuals that had the sales mentality, but also had a bit of the engineering mentality as well to keep good systems behind him. I know, like a lot of sales guys, we all like I did it for a long
Yeah.
time. We struggle with the systems part of our own personal
Well,
aspect.
his training, he was an accountant.
Oh,
So although he was never an accountant as a job, like he never had a job title of I'm an accountant. But yeah, he used that skill set,
nice.
in running his business. Um,
What do you
yeah.
think? What do you think today is? This is not a. I don't want this as a negative dig, but like, what do you think are some key elements that could help this industry as a whole? Like, let's just speak about beverages, for example, like, and speak about what's going on right now. With we talked a little bit about for a couple minutes the other day. Where do you think? Do you think it's unifying everybody together? Do you think it's everybody just buttoning up and really running their businesses, improving themselves, or like, what do you kind of think is the way we can change? Let's say public perception, I guess, as well first, and then the rest.
In public perception, to me, some of it is easy, right?
Yeah.
It's getting rid of the snake oil out there, right? If you're a bad actor, get out. Like go do something else. Like we want people who want to bring good quality, you know, effective consistent products to market. And so, that's, I think, one of the biggest things, right? There's a lot of companies out there that I think rely on the entourage effect
Yeah.
and the placebo effect of like, oh, I feel something.
Like when you're with, I mean, I know you said you didn't smoke, but it was like that in high school too. You know what I mean? Like people would
Yeah.
be like, "Oh, I'm really high." You know what
When
I mean?
people,
Well,
yeah, I had a lot of, I hung out with a crew of people that did.
you can always
It
tell the
just
guy who's
became,
speaking.
yeah, but it became weird that that I was the guy who didn't. I don't know. I was kind of counter culture in that respect. Like if everybody's doing it, like I also don't have any tattoos.
Okay,
You
yeah,
know,
nice.
so it's like, well, if everybody has a tattoo, then it's not really rebellious, is it?
I always I appreciate that perspective of it, and I really do. Were you what was it? I mean, we're about the same age. Did you do what was that? The black magic marker when you did the X on it? Do you remember that?
I remember something about that. What?
Yeah, so if you were completely clean and didn't do anything, if you went to a gathering of people, you would take a black magic marker and put an X on the back of your paw, on the back of your hand,
Okay.
and then people, it was like a way that like people could respectfully not like bother you or push things on you and things like that. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that same thing exists, but I remember in the '90s I saw it prevalently with certain kids. It wasn't me, but it was the other ones.
Yeah.
So yeah, I went
Hey,
right
to
in
each
from
their
high
own.
school into the alcohol industry, so I didn't waste any time at all. Yeah.
There you go. My brother has been in alcohol and spirit sales for, I don't even know how long. Shoot, 20 years, I guess. At some point, he kind of did the same. He started working at a liquor store when he was in college, and then went into sales and wine sales and a lot of that stuff. So
My dad made the biggest mistake ever by telling me I was like one of the first in my family to go to college. There's only my cousin has his own landscaping business. Other than that, everybody else, we're the only ones that have started our businesses. And I remember graduating high school and calling my dad, and I was working in breakage. I was 19 years old, and I was working in breakage at a beer wholesaler. So
yeah,
I don't know if you know that, like in the back room, they just put you in the back room. You fix the broken case. For the audience, I'll tell you, the
yeah,
cases fall off while they're doing deliveries. The cases come back. You repackage them into other ones. You label them as repack, and then you kind of save as much efficiencies as you can from damages. It's a very boring job, and it's very dirty and very gross and everything like that.
yeah,
But I still loved it, and I started loving the industry, seeing the trucks going back and forth, seeing the sport, like seeing all the signage getting made inside the building, seeing it going out. And I told my dad, I was like, "This is what I want to do for the rest of my life." And he's like, he goes, he was just so shocked because he remembered that he told me when I graduated high school, find what you love to do, and then find a way to make money at it. He's like, that's
yeah,
all I want you to do in life. And when I called him and said, I found it, he was just, he couldn't, now 17 or 20, 21 years later, he gets it. But back then, my parents were just like, oh my God, what he's working in the alcohol industry, he's just throwing parties all day long. And they weren't
yeah,
seeing like the business that was being started in that moment. But it's interesting in these industries, like, I think the biggest thing about public perception, I hope everybody hears this, is like there is a lot of bad actors, but there's a lot of people that have their shit together and a lot of people that are buttoned up and a lot of people that care. And I think it's a
yeah,
lot of times that doesn't get the clicks and that doesn't get the media headlines and that doesn't get the
yeah, yeah.
district attorneys and the police standing side by side with a table full of stuff acting like they did a Coast Guard drug bust, coming from international waters. So
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame that's the case, right? You don't celebrate the person. I mean, it's unfortunately the way our culture is. You don't celebrate the person who's doing the right thing every day nearly as often as you celebrate the catching the person that was doing the wrong thing. You know, so yeah, it's a bummer.
but hey, what
But
I
I do
want to do, I
think,
want to,
to your point, there is a lot. There are a lot more people. There are a lot more groups. As the industry has continued to evolve and get better, there are a lot more people that are doing it for the right reasons and doing the right things. That aren't running pseudo meth labs. Um, as their operation. So
no,
it's good to see.
exactly, and it's a good point. And I'll circle back to something I said in the beginning about finding trustworthy clients and things like that. I want to say now in the current past couple of years, it's been easier to find good clients because there are more good operators, and
Yeah,
that is very true. I want to close out and say exactly what you just said there. I want everybody to remember like the intent of what this podcast is about. It's about telling stories like Dan's, and it's getting these stories out there because again, they don't get enough clicks and they don't get enough attention. And Dan, I appreciate you taking the time for a lot of reasons, but the number one is there was no questions in advance. You had no idea what we were going to talk about. We met for about 3 minutes or 4 minutes the other day, kind of quickly, and I want you to know that like it's not blowing smoke up your ass, but it's a really big deal in 2025 moving forward that people are willing to take chances and come on camera for an hour and not knowing what's going on and be able to trust the process and be able to show the public that two complete strangers that we don't even know anything a lot about each other in a depth, but we got to know a good snapshot of each other in this moment here.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate you taking the time and taking the chance. And just kudos to you for being willing to do that. And I appreciate you telling your story. And I look forward to having more conversations with you. I definitely want to bring you in. We're going to start doing some roundtables next year with different topics and things like that. So I'd love to
Great.
bring you in from your perspective on the industry, along with the manufacturer, and have some roundtable discussions as well.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I mean, thanks for doing it. It's fun.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a risk, but who the hell am I to,
We're
it's,
in the vices business, so we wake up, we risk for breakfast.
yeah. I mean, you mentioned something like, you're not gonna cut and edit things
Yeah.
out of order or whatever. And I'm like, I'm not important enough to have somebody like try to do an expose on me, right? Like it's not a big deal. Like nobody's like trying to get that gotcha moment on me because nobody knows who the hell I am to be able to say gotcha to. So,
No, it's all good,
but
Dan.
yeah,
You're a good man, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate the courage you had, and thanks for telling your story. And I look forward to getting to know you more over the next couple weeks and months. I'm sure we're gonna have some follow up conversations and things like that, man.
yeah, yeah,
Excellent.
absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
Hey, yeah, you have a good rest of your day, and thank you everybody out there. Remember, no prep, no scripts. This is the realest thing on the internet. Genuine connection of strangers telling their story. So, Dan, thank you so much, and check out lixingredients.com. So, real quick, everybody, get out there, check out lixingredients.com with Dan. All right. Hey, thanks so much, Dan. You take care, man.
You too. Thank you. I
All right,
appreciate
buddy.
it.
Take care.
All right.